Hey, it's Joy. I've got big feelings about little things, and I want to talk about it. Oh yeah, I'm mad about it. And the fact that everyone else is not up in arms about it is a big part of the problem. Oh, I bawled my eyes out, like I always do. It was the sweetest thing. Oh, it was the cutest thing. It was the funniest thing. Thanks for being here. Let's go. Hi, thank you so much for being here. If you were here the last couple of weeks and listened to my woes of working, I super appreciate it. What really cracked me up was that a couple of people were like, man, I can't believe how much you've been through at different workplaces. And then others were like, really? That's your most traumatic? That's your biggest work trauma? That's your most toxic work situation? Okay. And it's a good reminder that, yeah, it's all about perspective, right? For some people, that is like a walk in the park. And for some people, like, couldn't even fathom that. So just the different experiences we have and how they not compare, but kind of when you bump them up against each other, they really make you think differently. I did want to say that at that particular organization, I did have great memories from there and really fun. It was a fun couple of years that I spent there, and I met some really great people. I learned a ton, and I was treated very well in other circumstances away from that person. And I do think I'll share another story from there. This is another one that's not for the kids, and if it's got a violent undertone. So if that's not your thing, skip this episode as well. I'm not trying to make a bunch of episodes you have to skip, but it's my countdown to the end of the season, and I'm taking a break over the summer. And so I'm just trying to get in a few last stories that I'd like to tell you for one reason or another. And if the reason is purely selfish and it's just me trying to tell all my stories and get them out, and then I say, okay, cool, I never have to write a book, I never have to tell the story again, then okay. I mean, whose podcast is not like just a full homage to themselves? I mean, they all are, right? So while I was at that job, I told you I worked at a radio station, and it was a very small town and a very small. The stations themselves were small, of course, because the town was small. And I was explaining that most people that have a radio station own multiple radio stations, so they'll own different formats. We call it like the place I worked had an FM station that was top 40, and then an AM station that was news. Across town, there was a country station and a rock station. Since I wasn't from that town, I didn't know much about it. But while I was there, my company bought the country station and the rock station, and we moved to that station. You know, we got new studios, and we all moved in the big building, a big building together. And during that time, one of the goals was for us to learn the other stations. So I was working the morning show of the top 40 at that time. It was just me by myself. So it was at that time, it was huge for me. I loved it. I loved every minute. It was morning show versus what I was doing. I was talking to more listeners, and I had way more interaction, and it was fun. I was getting up in the middle of the night, but I was young. I did not care. And I thought I would be doing that for the rest of my life. So it just didn't faze me one bit. But I was by myself, and we just didn't have the staff to create a team or anything like that. But when we bought the country station, the program director of that station was like, oh, would you come do like middays for us? I think you would sound perfect over there. Because I don't think they had any females in that building that I remember. None that were on the air. I'm pretty sure I was the only female there the whole time I was there. Gosh, I forgot about that. So like I went over there to learn their way, their clock, their way, their music, da 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 da. And then folks would come over to us and learn our stuff from that team, so that before we moved, we were all ready to be one big cohesive team. And I met this guy named Brian. I really changed his name for his and his family's privacy, but he was a very nice guy, sort of a little bit of a down on your luck guy. It was sort of like you could tell that things didn't quite cut the way that he wanted them to cut in life. He was a little bit on the smaller side, and I think that's really hard for some men. Not everybody has the confidence and the money of Kevin Hart to just make that work. And I mean, he was like me. He wanted to go be successful in broadcasting. And I'm just not sure that he was, at the talent level to make it. And it's okay for me to say that, because I also was not at the talent level to make it. And we worked together a few times. I don't remember what we had to do, but we had to go to a couple of events together, and we got along pretty well. But I also knew that he had a wife and a daughter, and it's hard to make money enough in a business like that, or in a town like we were in. There wasn't a ton of money flowing. And so he was kind of always on like the edge of, just living paycheck to paycheck and wanting a little bit more. And his wife I met her. She was really sweet. She was becoming a nail technician. So I went and got my nails done a couple of times, and she was really sweet. And I heard through some of his stories a little like undertone of, I don't even want to say violence. I just knew that him owning a gun came up in the story. Him brandishing that gun during certain circumstances came up as part of stories. And so that was just kind of tucked away in the back of my mind. And as we got to know each other, as the new company and the new employees got to know each other, this guy did not like my owner, the guy that owned the business. They rubbed each other wrong he rubbed him wrong for some reason. And I'll be honest, I don't remember any of that. I just remember he had in his mind how things were supposed to go, and they weren't going that way. And he was none too happy, and definitely wanted to blame him. So one day we were hanging out, and we were talking about the owner, and he said something like, if he doesn't watch out, I might shoot him. It wasn't that direct, but he made it clear. It was in the same vein of like, oh, that guy makes me so mad. I just want to punch him right in the face. Except instead of him saying punch him right in the face, he said, I just want to shoot him or something. And please remember, this is 22-year-old Joy, or 25, however old I was. I was very young. It was my first job ever. I was away from home. I was like very naive, but that was unsettling. I was like, oh, dang. And I even said, oh, no, this is what happened. Okay. So it started with that. And he said something like that about him. And then he said, yeah, I'd just shoot up this whole place, as a matter of fact. And I said, well, but not me, right? Like, we were kind of friends. And, of course, I was not doing any of this stuff that he was mad about. I had no control over anything. And I was just like, yeah, you wouldn't do that to me, right? But he said, no, I wouldn't. But if you get a menacing phone call from me one day, I'd make myself scarce. And that shook me, because number one, I believed him. And I sort of thought, man, if you make it through all those thought processes to have a plan like that worries me a little bit. So not knowing what to do and knowing the relationship I had with my boss. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It was not good. He was very, I think, threatened, but he was very, not very emotionally mature and not able to like really be a good leader to me. He was kind of doing his own thing. But we had been running a PSA, like a public service announcement. We in a small town like that, we did a lot of those kind of things. And one of them was that there was an office of something, something, something that had resources on all kinds of things, including workplace violence. Now, I mean, this was post Columbine, but barely. It's not, we weren't in this place now where kids are doing active shooter drills and stuff all the time. It was still very rare and a very, like, just, it was very unknown. And so I went to the place and, again, little naive Joy, a resource means a pamphlet. There was a pamphlet. And I was like, okay, well, I read the pamphlet. I did not know what I was supposed to do. And so I went and told the boss about it. Even knowing our relationship, I still was like, I felt this weight of like, well, what if somebody does get hurt? What if somebody gets killed? And I knew that it might have been coming. Yes, I want to save myself, but I'm not trying like for everyone else to, have to suffer the consequences too. And he's like, I've heard people say stuff like this. I know he said stuff like this to other people, but what am I supposed to do about it? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm scared, like I don't like this. And so, I just go home and I, cry and figure like, okay, we'll see what happens. And if I do get a phone call, I guess I'll just take whoever I can with me. I don't know. Well, the next day, the boss had talked to the team about it and the owners and the people running it. And they were very well known in the area. And they had some friends on the police force. And they had them come over in some unmarked cars and wanted to talk to me, asked me what I'd heard, asked a couple of other people what had he said, what were the circumstances, da 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 da. Do you know if he has a firearm? That kind of thing, just interviews. And there was a few of us that had heard something similar along those lines, but we didn't know it at that time. So I went to go do my shift and he came in and the first thing out of it, I was like, hey, he goes, what are all the cops doing here? And I was like, what? What? And he's like, yeah, there's a bunch of unmarked cars out there. And I just kept thinking like, how do you know what's an unmarked cop car? And I mean, maybe everybody does know what that looks like, but even at that time, even knowing they were that, I still think, how would I know? Isn't it trying to not look? Anyway, all that to say, he walked in on fire, already knowing what was up, or just knowing that something was up. And that was real unsettling for me. And so the boss came and asked him to come to the back. They chit-chatted, I guess, and they arrested him and fired him that day while I was on the air. And the weight of that was tough. I was very grateful that I was not the only one he said anything to, because that took a little bit of the pressure off. Like, I wasn't trying to get this guy fired, but I also wasn't sure that he was just running his mouth, And the owners pulled me into their office, talked with me, got me a cup of coffee, really were comforting to me. Sorry this happened. They were very kind, and I felt like they let me go home early, but it was way too long ago to actually remember that. So I went home And one of my best friends there, he called me, and he was like kind of like my big brother there. He was a couple of years older than me and had like taken me under his wing because, I was brand new to town, didn't know anybody, let me hang out with him, his family and his friends. And he was like checking on me. And his idea of how to make me feel better was to tell me a dirty joke. And I won't tell it here because, I won't tell it here, obviously, because that's like not what this is about. If I were on Patreon, which is like it's like a paid channel where you can give like extra content, I'd be like, hey, subscribe to my Patreon and I'll tell you the joke that so-and-so told me to get me over this workplace violence situation. If you want to hear it, you're welcome to ask me and I'll send it to you. But Mom, not you. But he told me a joke and it made me chuckle, and he said, it's all going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And went back to work the very next day. And I still look back on that. I hated what happened. His story did not end in a happy way. He had some additional rough goes after us. He stayed in town. And, tried to kind of start again, and that didn't go well. And the whole story did not end well. And I hate that and always wished that things could have gone a different way. But I'm also very grateful that he gave us enough to, if there was something to be worried about, which it really felt like there was, I was grateful that little Joy was willing, despite that relationship with her boss and despite not knowing one thing of what to do or how to do it or what an unmarked police car looks like, that we still made it out without me having to tell a much different story, or for me to not be here to even tell a story at all. All I can hope is that his wife and daughter are doing well and having a good life. And I'm going to send up a prayer for them tonight. I hope you'll do the same. But I was taken good care of in that circumstance. And I'll tell you, that was a wild time. I think I could do an entire podcast on that job, honestly. It was fascinating. And it was the beginning of my story, my adult life story. So I think isn't that telling a little bit? Anyway, thanks for letting me tell that story. Reach out to me if you want to know the joke. And if I ever tell it to you, it's because I know that you're having a hard time and I don't know what else to do for you except to be like my friend Carl and tell you this joke and tell you everything's going to be all right. And I think it is.
Thanks for listening to Little Things, Big Feelings with Joy Delaney. I'm James, the producer, editor, director, and executive producer. Follow Joy on socials at Joy Delaney Cox on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Honestly, forget TikTok. I don't even know how to use it anyway.
You don't know how to use it anyway.
James?
Follow Joy on socials at Joy Delaney Cox on Instagram and Facebook. See you next week.